thank everybody for being here today. You know, it's really important that in times like this, that we're able to come together and unify as a community. Theologist and human rights activist Desmond Tutu once said, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse, and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality." That's the philosophy that comes to mind for me personally when I hear or read about situations like this. But today we're here because this happened in our own backyard. This happened in one of our school districts. Did you know, statistically speaking, last month, globally, 1 out of every 3 children experienced some form of bullying. In the United States, it's about 1 out of every 5 children. Those aren't good odds. Since last week, I've read countless stories of locals bullied who either graduated from, still go to, or have children enrolled in Sandusky City schools. I've read stories from all over the state and country, and it's all the same. The bully gets to be a bully, and when the victim finally stands up for themselves or snaps, they are the issue. Why is it so easy for schools to treat their students who have fallen victims of bullying as the problem? Why do they expect those students to solve that problem on their own? Those are my genuine questions, not just to Sandusky City Schools, but to every school district around this country. What did or what do you expect to come from a situation like that when those are the only options you lay out for the children being bullied? As a parent of a child starting kindergarten next year, I don't just expect my local school districts to know it's their responsibility and duty to provide a safe and positive learning environment for our children, but I expect them to at least try. It's really disheartening to think that the same kind of issues when I was in school over a decade ago are still going on in our schools today. The bully who's connected to a family gets away with being a bully simply for that, and it's wrong. But you know that. That's why you're all here today, to stop requesting change and start demanding it. And this change, it has to happen in more than just our schools and how they handle bullies, or rather how they selectively enforce bullying. Sandusky Police Department has demonstrated we need real reform in our police department as well. They arrested a 12-year-old girl, a child, for being bullied and then put her in jail. Shame on you. You've not just embarrassed yourselves as a police department, but you've embarrassed our entire city. The negligent choices that Sandusky Police Department made, it reflects poorly on all of us as a community. The last time I checked, the job of our police force is to protect our children, not throw them in a cell because the school district didn't find it necessary to do their jobs. We've seen it here locally. Our entire state of Ohio has seen it, and the rest of our country sees it too. And not just because this particular incident went viral. People see it because it's happening in their backyards as well. For too long, people have chose to turn a blind eye to it. I say not here, not anymore. How many of our children do we have to let our system fail before we break this vicious cycle? Like I mentioned before earlier, unfortunately, these kinds of dilemmas aren't something I'm a stranger to. I grew up and graduated from Oak Harbor. Maybe some of you are familiar with it. I witnessed the same kind of toxic culture, and as a child, it never really made sense because it was the norm. But the difference is now, I know better. Just to give some examples, a good friend of mine in middle school, she was bullied every single day, cornered in the hallway and tormented by a group of boys that constantly told her she should kill herself. One day in class, she actually took their advice. She snapped and slit her arm open. Do you know what the school's response was? They expelled the girl, even though she was the victim, and her aggressors saw no punishment. Regrettably, this wasn't the only person at Oak Harbor that I knew who dealt with issues like this. Another girl, her bully rode her bus home, and every single day he found amusement out of tormenting her. Finally, one day she stuck up for herself and said, "You do realize, acting like that, people like you, these are the kinds of reasons things like Columbine happen. And yes, it's dark. And yes, maybe it makes you uncomfortable, but it's a fact, and it's true." And she got in trouble for pointing out the facts. Both of these incidents were over a decade ago, yet the rhetoric remains the same. Over the weekend, I read an updated case about a girl that was sexually assaulted in Huron last year. Subsequently, Huron Detective Matt Jacobs, who was investigating the case, was also the athletic coach of the aggressor. So am I to believe it's coincidence Jacobs managed to failed to deliver incriminating evidence against someone on his team to the prosecutor? I think not. And I can't be the only one that sees this pattern. We have to be better than this, and the only way to do that is start holding these figures of authority accountable. And let's make it clear, when I say accountable, I don't just mean pretending everything's okay because someone wants to stand up and give a half-assed apology right before going back to how things are. That's no longer acceptable. We need to stop letting these victims of bullying be blamed. We need to stop normalizing turning a blind eye against it. Money, status, and sports are a piss poor reason for failing these kids. You're teaching these bullies it's acceptable to treat people like garbage without consequences. And that's exactly why we have people like Brock Turner in this world. The buck stops here. Our victims deserve better. Shondrea deserves better. Her family deserves better. Our community deserves better.
That's right. I'll speak for us all, Boo.
In closing, I'd like to repeat the words of former President Abraham Lincoln. The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate for the stormy present and future. As our circumstances are anew, we must think anew and act anew. And so we must. We need to address these old issues in a new way. The accountability of making sure our future tomorrows are more rewarding, more fulfilling, and paving the way for a higher moral standard in the eyes of today's youth. Only with solidarity can we think anew and act anew. Thank you. Without further ado, it's my honor to introduce our next speaker. He's the author of Hazing Through a Victim's Eyes and has been featured on The Mel Robbins Show. Everyone give a round of applause for Adam Sand.
Stop it with a mask, but for some unknown reason, bullying, which has been around forever, we can't stop that. And why can't we stop that? This girl over here, Shondrea, trying to protect herself is the one that gets in trouble. And that's how our justice system works. That's what the bully is allowed to get away with. Let me share my story. Growing up, I was always bullied. School was never easy for me. And I was always told, ignore it. The bullying will stop. Went through middle school, bullying didn't stop. Went through high school, bullying didn't stop. And I was supposed to play the role of victim. I don't think so. Went to college. In college, a football player. As part of the football team, I went home for a funeral, came back, and was brutally hazed. And I had no option to fight back, being outnumbered. And every time I spoke, things got worse, and worse, and worse. The name calling, to the point I didn't even want to be around anymore. So again, I asked, when does bullying stop in this country? When are we going to stop it? If we could stop the pandemic, slow it down with the use of masks, why can't we do it for bullying? It's time to put a mask on bullying. And without further ado, I want to address the next speaker, Christina.
I'm Christina, I'm Drea's aunt. There's a lot of things that we can sit up here and discuss about bullying, about these kids being treated any kind of way from other kids, even by adults. But you have teachers that are bullies. You have police officers that are bullies. Our own legal system is a big bully. Our government is a bully. Every day, people are being treated wrong. They're not being treated like people. My niece had to sit in jail at 12 years old because she had enough. Put yourself in a situation where your braids get slapped, your tray gets knocked out of your hand. Every day, someone's calling you fat, making you feel like you're less. Eventually, you're going to snap. She took the right action. She told the people she was supposed to tell. She told the teachers. She told the principal. Now, y'all may not feel like me. I've never been one to care who agrees with my opinions and who don't. I teach my kids, my daughters. If a boy is picking on you, you've told who you're supposed to tell. Well, you have a brother to whoop his ass if nothing's done. I teach my son. If a girl puts her hands on you, you have sisters that will whoop her ass if nothing is done. I teach my kids an eye for an eye. You do to other people what you want done to you. You treat other people the way you want to be treated. If you want to be treated like shit, treat other people like shit. If you want to be treated with respect, then you treat other people with respect. In this case, it's just a big old case of the bully got his ass whooped. He got bullied. As he should have. Because she told the teachers nothing was done. She told the principal nothing was done. So she told her brother who did something.
That's right.
But nothing was done to him. He got to go to virtual school. She didn't. He didn't go to jail. He went to Arizona and Florida on vacation while she was locked up. Couldn't see her mom. Got to talk to her mom and dad for 10 minutes a day. She's 12. She's already going through enough. And then our system always wants to blame, oh, this child has mental problems, or this child is out of control, has severe behavior. It ain't nothing in most cases that a good ass whooping at home can't solve. Most of these kids, their parents make excuses for the things that they do instead of holding them accountable. No, you did this, so you pay the price. I'm not bailing you out this time. Instead, we live in a society where parents think that it's okay to make excuses for your kids. Well, he did this because she did that. Or he was just playing, it was just a joke. Jokes aren't just jokes. I sat in my house full of high school football players, and my daughter can attest she was there. The way they sat there and said they feel when other kids tell them this or tell them that. They sat in my house and cried. And then I watched them unify and hug each other and tell each other that they're sorry. They didn't know that the things they said made them feel that way. And it brought the football team closer together. All these kids, all of our kids go through things. been the bullies at one point or another. Sometimes these kids think that what they're doing is a joke, that it doesn't affect other people. But that's where we at home have to teach our kids what's a probable joke and what's not a joke. People don't take everything as a joke. This boy's mom said he was just joking with Drea. You don't just joke by slapping her brains. You don't just joke by slapping her tray out of her hand. You don't just joke by calling her fat. So now my 12-year-old niece no longer wants to be in cheerleading. She no longer really has a desire to be around other kids because she's afraid of what's going to be said next. She talks every day to her mom about losing weight. At 12, that should be the furthest thing from your mind. Our kids didn't grow up like we did. This is a whole new era. It's a whole new society and a whole new generation. Our kids battle daily issues and daily struggles that sometimes we don't know about. And they deal with it and deal with it and deal with it until it gets to the point where they can't take it no more. They go to school and they shoot up the schools. They go to Walmart and they shoot up the Walmarts. They do things to other people. And it all, 9 times out of 10, started with being bullied and being failed by the teachers, by the school system, by the police. Nobody talks about that though. Nobody says anything about all the people who have failed this person. So when they finally take justice into their own hands, they're the bad person. No, I don't buy that shit. It's wrong. My niece was done wrong. The school system has not been held accountable. The police that arrested her have not been held accountable. Like the juvenile justice center hasn't been held accountable. Like, come on now. Who gets held accountable for what she's going through? Her? She's 12. She shouldn't have to sit in jail and be away from her mom because she defended herself. She shouldn't have to be on an ankle monitor and not be allowed, 10 feet from it? Because she defended herself. Something needs done. More needs done. And if everybody don't stand up together and decide to do something, then we all fall apart as individuals and it stays the same.
Hello, everyone. I am Shondrea's grandmother. I was really messed up behind this. If I was like I was 10 years ago, the teacher, the kids, the parents, and all would have been beat up. But God has changed me, and I feel really bad for my grandchild. I already went through something with 2 of my other grandkids, violence, in December. Now I'm going through something with my other grandchild being bullied. We all need to stand up and do something. Quit being scared. We don't gotta be violent. There's a certain way we can go about it, a legal way. But grandkids coming to y'all, please talk to them. Then I had two other of my grandkids my daughter had to take them out of the school up there because they were being bullied, and the school took the other kids' side. Had my grandkids walking way down the street and around the corner to their house because the other kids is bullying them, talking about killing them. It's not going to happen here. So whoever the news, the police, the news reporter, whoever see it, I'm going to stand up for mine, and they know me very well.
Hi everybody, and thank you everybody for coming out and support Shondrea and sharing the post.
Put it up to your mouth. Shani, put it up to your mouth.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah. Well, I just want to say I'm Shondrea's mom, and we just want to thank everybody for the support and really was showing love to see that this situation she was in was really messed up. So I really appreciate everybody that came out today, everybody that shared their posts and got in touch with the school, anybody that did anything to help get my baby out of this syndrome. I really appreciate it. Has been bullied since elementary school. She has been getting bullied. Either it was about her hair, or either it was about her weight, or anything. Like, she just been like targeted. She finally stood up for herself, and clearly y'all see what happened. It wasn't right. But I'm just glad that she's out of the syndrome and went back home with her family. Because she really missed her and really loved her brothers, really missed her and loved her family, grandma. Everybody really missed her and loved her. Dad. So, yeah, I'm a love her. So I just got up here to tell everybody thank you for supporting my baby and checking up on her family. I just really appreciate the love. And like he was saying, we need to stop the bullying. Like I said, it's not going to stop. We can't control what kids do, but we can speak up. Don't be scared to speak up at all. But that's all I wanted to do for today. Thank you, everybody. Oh, her brother want to say something. Never mind, you don't want to speak no more.
Drea's nervous, y'all. She's not good at speaking in front of people. But I did want to say one more thing before we go. Here in our school system, we have teachers having sex with students, male and female. We have teachers who sexually harass students. I know this from personal experience because my own daughter was sexually harassed by a teacher. It was reported to the principal. They had a talking to with that teacher. The teacher then retaliated and my daughter got suspended. So I went back to the school and I made myself very clear in telling Mr. Talbot, I believe that was the principal. Was that the principal I talked to? I think so. I made myself very clear in telling him, if this teacher has another interaction with my child, if he sees my child walking down the hallway, he better turn his head and look the other way. Because there's not enough law enforcement in this city to keep me from not dealing with somebody who has sexually harassed my child and been warned about it.
Yes.
There's not enough judicial system when we allow prosecutors to trade sex for drug test passes from the people that are on probation. There's nothing being done. But my thing is this. They say that we're innocent until we're proven guilty, right? So why the hell do we gotta sit in jail until we can prove that we ain't guilty? Why is our freedoms taken from us until we can prove that we're not guilty? I don't understand our legal system, our justice system. It is so flawed and it is failing so bad. where they tore shit up, shit started changing. When you start costing these old people with money, when you start costing them money, that's when things start changing. Nothing was done for my niece until thousands of people, even in other states, started making posts and holding people accountable on why is she in jail, why is she in jail. Then and only then was she released. It shouldn't have to be like that. I understand there's he said, she said, and then there's the truth. I get that. But when you have someone who has reported it multiple times, there's obviously got to be some truth to it. Nothing was done. When you have someone who went through the proper protocols, nothing was done, and then them same people that she reported it to go back and say, well, we don't remember. We didn't take any notes. Oh, so in Sandusky City Schools, y'all take notes now every time a student gets bullied. Every time a student reports to you that someone did something, y'all take notes. See, because why everybody's busy paying attention to me right now, nobody's paying attention to the kids that were over there just talking mess to each other. And that's exactly how easy it is for a teacher to get distracted in a classroom full of 32 kids, and I didn't see it. I don't know who did what. It's that easy. Does that mean it didn't happen? Absolutely not. When you have a teacher, or when you have a student that comes up to a teacher and says, I was stabbed in the back of my neck with a pencil by this person. There's clearly a lead mark on my neck. Sit down. You don't do things like that. That happened to me at middle school in 6th grade. I got stung by a bee in my back. My teacher was a man. It made me raise my shirt up in front of the whole class in 6th grade, just developing balls. Just started wearing a bra. I had to raise my shirt up in front of the whole classroom so he could see that I got stung on the bee by a bee in my back. Why? Why wouldn't you take me aside and say, okay, let me see it? Because it wasn't bee season, he didn't believe me. But it's just things like these that go unnoticed by our teachers, that go unpunished. Little things like that all lead up to somebody exploding. Little things like that all lead up to the point where people just can't take it anymore. And we have a justice system that allows sex offenders to walk free, and allows bullies to walk free. But the victim is the one that has to suffer in silence every single day. That's a problem. That's sad. It's pathetic. I watched, and if everybody knows us, everybody knows I call Shondrea my wife. That's my wife. We are each other's better half. But I watched my wife cry 5, 6, 7 times a week. I watched her sit there, not be able to really do anything. We went out to eat. She did not eat because all she kept talking about was, man, I hope my baby's okay. Like, she was having anxiety attacks until she left. Like, I want to call up there. They won't tell me nothing. They won't tell me how she's doing. They won't tell me if she's still, like, terrified. Can you imagine as a mother, you sitting here and the last thing you see of your child or father, the last thing you see of your child is your child being pulled out of the courtroom hyperventilating, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it, all because she stood up for herself. Imagine that. Imagine how you would feel. It's not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling to not sleep for days at a time, to not eat, because you don't know what your child is going through, because you can't be there. You can't even call and check on them. That is a feeling that no parent should have to know, especially when a child is thinking themselves.
Okay, we talked a lot about accountability. But what does accountability really look like? It starts by Sandusky City Schools recognizing the children that they failed. And let's make it clear, I'll say it again, it's not a request. The faculty who witnessed and had student complaints made to them, I strongly suggest they reflect on their morals, because these people, they know who they are. And once again, I'll say too, money, status, and sports are not a reason to fail these students. It's not an excuse. It's time to take action. And no, hanging anti-bullying banners and posters and patting yourself on the back because you had an assembly, that is not accountability. What do you really think you're successing with that other than making yourself feel better because you knew you did these students wrong? If I might make a suggestion, maybe the school should start banning bullies from playing sports. If they want to play their game, maybe they should start treating their peers better. Start treating them with respect. Start treating them how they should have been treated to begin with. Maybe make these bullies start writing essays on places like Columbine, Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, Parkland. Make them just as uncomfortable learning about these tragedies that they made their victims of bullying feel experiencing it. Maybe then they'll understand why their actions aren't acceptable, why bullying is not okay, and why we can't just watch it happen anymore. Over the last couple of days, I've been following this stuff on the register, and I found quite a few public comments that, well, I mean, I guess you can just hear for yourself. There was one local that posted, my daughter was in second grade getting bullied at Mills Elementary. There were police reports filed, and she came home with red marks on her chest from getting beat up on the bus. I walked into the school and her principal was pulling her by the arm, and that led up to getting her hospitalized for 2 months. Another local shared, my daughter has had bullying issues at this school in the Sandusky district. They do nothing. A third, my son was physically assaulted daily for almost a year while in Sandusky Middle School. Their resolution, which was 4 years ago, never once informed the parents that the kids were put in peer counseling where teachers sat in with both the students and made them talk them out. And do you know what it led to? The kid being a snitch and getting it worse. Never was there a resolution, never an apology, only a child that was bruised all over his chest and stomach that was told by the school he wasn't allowed, or that they weren't allowed to look it over to prove that it happened. And how did it end? His taller and stronger friends handled it for him off school grounds. Is it the right solution for me as a parent? Absolutely not. It did stop the assaults though, and even though the school took credit for it with their peer counseling, I can tell you firsthand, it did more harm than good for my son. The next one was, my daughter left St. Mary's to go to Sandusky City Schools. She said the girls bully the other girls all the time and she feels like they talk about her too. I tell her not to let them take you out of your character. The next one, this is exactly why my daughter switched to homeschooling. She was bullied daily in the middle school, report after report, and nothing done about it. The last one, some things will never change with Sandusky schools. Bullying will continue no matter who you notify. I went through this 10 years ago with my child, and over 30 years ago myself. Turning a blind eye is what they do. Bullying, undocumented, from this viral incident dating back to 30 years ago. They have let this go for 3 decades, and enough is enough. That's all there is to it. What's right is right, and what's wrong is wrong. And they know that they've done wrong, and it's time to start holding these people accountable. Thank you all for being here today. I appreciate every single one of you for coming out and taking the time.